Hello everyone, and here we are up to part 9. Part 9 will end up most everything that we're going to do in CAD, and the only thing that's going to cause this to go to a bit longer length is the discussion of how to get stuff printed using SketchUp. Now again, as I mentioned in the last video, if you're using another CAD program, then the techniques and what you'll have to do in order to get your templates printed out are going to be different. Almost any other CAD program other than SketchUp makes it fairly easy to do, but the SketchUp free version does not. I mentioned jumping through hoops, and that's exactly what we're going to have to do. Let's get started on that right now. We're going to finish up blocking out the wing block diagrams so that we'll know how to cut those foam blocks out, and then get all of our stuff printed. Hello everyone, we're back in our old familiar SketchUp workspace. Now we've got a couple of more outlines to draw, and that is the outlines for vertical, horizontal, and horizontal stab and the wing panel, because what I do, and you can either do it just by pen and ink or do what I do, I'll draw out this panel, print it out, and just lay this down on the foam block and trace around it. We're going to have to do these cutouts, or I'm going to have to do them, and this is the way that I'm going to do them. We take a look up here. This is 230 millimeters on our root rib. So when we want the outline down here, we're not going to depend on just starting here and drawing a line until we get down here and quitting. We're going to draw a 230 millimeter line. So we'll get up here to the top and select the leading edge and just come down on the green axis and 230, type that in, and then you've got an exact length line. Now over here we decided that we weren't going to do the root here. We're going to do the root here where the foam starts turning in, and that was 126 millimeters. So we're going to do the same thing out here. We chose a point right here where the curve started, and what we'll do is go on the face of this and we'll come down, and that one will be 126. So now we have the root and the tip drawn in. We don't have any ailerons on this plan because this model didn't have them. This was a little rudder only stick and tissue model, and it did not have ailerons. And we're going to draw in ailerons, but it's going to use the that looks about right method. These models, I've done a ton of them in this size, and I know what will work pretty well for an aileron size here. So if we come across now, we've got a leading edge. If we draw this in now, we'll have a trailing edge, and it'll make a solid for us. So let's draw this in, and there's our solid. Now on top of this wing panel is where we're going to draw the ailerons. So if we come out here close to the tip, I found that aileron widths of about 25 or 30 millimeters are fine. The wider, of course, the more authority the aileron will have. However, it can get to the point where it's so twitchy that it's not very much fun to fly. So we'll use 28 millimeters and come up right about there. We'll also come kind of eyeball about 1/3 of our panel, our overall panel length. About 1/3 works well for ailerons. And we'll come in here, and right about there looks good. And again, we were at 28 millimeters. Now all we've got to do is connect those. Now we've got our outlines for our core. We'll just sit this on a block of foam, chop it out. We've got that, and we have a place to draw out our ailerons. Now I'm going to make this a component because I'm going to draw the wingtip block now too. So make that a component so that we don't have anything sticking to it out here. This wingtip is going to be carved out of a solid block of balsa. So we don't have to be too precise about this because the final shaping is going to be by hand. So once again, now nothing will stick to this because it's a component. Once again, we can take the line tool, and although it says we're drawing on it, we're not. We're going to put a line down here and to that end point. And then we'll just take, say, the arc tool. The arc will get us closer, or close enough, I should say. We'll select that end and that end, and we're going to just pull an arc out here. Well, maybe that won't get us that close. Let's take the Bezier tool. I'm all for, kind of eyeballing stuff. I'd like it to be a little bit closer than that. Okay, well, we're going to have trouble with a reflex curve here. And the way to end that trouble is to come out here where the line changes direction and make two of them. So we'll take that Bezier. We're doing an auto save again. Take the Bezier curve, and we'll start it here and here now. Right there. And we're going to come up perpendicular on the face of that image. Now, as you see, it's not perfectly continuous with that, but we're just going to make a smooth curve here because all this is going to be done via carving. So now if we come out here and we take this endpoint, we come down here to this endpoint, and we sort of approximate that curve and done an exit. Alright, there we've got a really nice wingtip pattern to use. I will eliminate that. Now, that wingtip, of course, is not a component, and it's not stuck to this. If I move this, the wingtip is still there. So what we've got to do now is make it a component also, so that we're not messing about with it. So make it an arbitrary component, and now we're done. Okay, we've got the wing plan form laid out so that all we've got to do is make a template, drop it on a piece of foam, and chop it out. That's what makes these builds go so fast. Now, I know that you're probably laughing your ass off right now after these lengthy videos about me talking about fast anything. Well, I can understand that. But trust me, guys, what I've done here and taken hours to illustrate and talk about and everything else this is really only about one evening's work at the computer, if that, just a couple of hours. And well, I would say less than a couple of hours, and all this will be done. So we're just talking a lot, and that's for the new guys. All right, new guys, here we go. We're next going to do the vertical stabilizer. So we're going to need a couple of these things down there. We're going to need this former, and we're going to need the not the former, but the template, and we're going to need the square cutout for the horizontal stab. So I've selected those, and I'm going to select the move tool and a copy, of course. So let's take the data line. We'll use that as our point of reference. Now we've got a copy of these two components. We're going to drop right down here. Now this says former F10, so we're going to put it on former F10 and align it with the datum line right there. Now we see that when we draw this vertical stab, it's going to come down to this level right here. That's as far down as it will go because, of course, the thickness of the horizontal stab has to be taken into consideration. So we'll just get in here and start drawing. We don't have to worry about anything sticking to this because it's components. Okay, we'll start right about there and just drop down. Now we'll follow this out the back where it will exit the fuselage here. We'll come down to here, out to here, and up to here where the curve starts. And now we'll go across and start another curve down to right about there. No, we don't need this top line here, so well, I'm going to leave it. It'll just help me find these points. Now we'll come down here. We'll select the Bezier curve again. Maybe I ought to pronounce it two different ways, a different way every time, and then that way half the time I'll be right. And that curve looks good, so we'll put that in there, hit done and exit tool. Now we've got, with this closure here, we have a solid, but we're going to get rid of that. We're going to remake it a solid in a moment, but first I want to outline the rudder. And we'll go up here just to make sure that it's off of the side. Bezier tool again, here, here, and let's come in here and get the top shape down. And that's looking fairly close. It's probably a reflex curve, but this is all going to be shaped by hand. So small deviations from the plan here is not really going to hurt anything. Okay, now we've got that. It didn't make a solid, but I know that it is. So I'll come up here and use the Make Face plugin after we autosave. Here we go. Now we've got the rudder. Okay, so let's come in here and get rid of this little extra tick mark. We don't need that. And again, this little kink here and here will be out with a stroke of the sanding tool. Now this was a copy, so we don't need this anymore. We can just merely delete it. I can click on it because we already have the main copy up here. Now once again, we'll take this. We're going to make a component of it, and we're going to move it also. Move tool. And just stick it up here in the storage dump. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the horizontal stab that I did with the wing. So I'm going to speed this up so that you don't have to watch through all that boring stuff again. Alright guys, after this fairly long digression, getting the panels outlined and moved over here so that we'll have them to cut around to make our parts, we're going to finally get to what the subject of this video was to begin with, and that's printing. SketchUp doesn't make this easy to do. It will print, and it would print from this screen right here. However, when it prints, and if you print this one-to-one, it sees the entire thing as one big piece of paper. So if you printed this on a small printer, you would print about a bajillion sheets of paper. You can, however, print one-to-one. But in order to do that, you have to kind of trick SketchUp into thinking that what you're looking at here in the SketchUp workspace, all of what you're looking at is what you want to print. So in order to do that, we're going to zoom way in on a part. And I'll just use this Fuselage former number 1 for the example. We'll print that one first, and then you can print all the rest the same way. So we can't just zoom in here and select that and tell SketchUp to print it. It does not work. It will print this whole thing that you see here, including part of this, and we don't want that. So what you have to do is come down here and tighten up your screen really tight, and I'll use a positioning thing here, and then I'm going to blow it up as large as I can make it and still keep it within the boundaries of the page there. There we go. Now, when SketchUp prints, it prints this whole area here, including all this gray around it. It sees that rather as the page. It sees it as part of the page you want to print. Of course, that's not right. You don't want that. You just want this part printed one-to-one. Now, one of the important things that I've been talking about all along is keeping your view in parallel projection. It's really critical now. This has to be in parallel projection for this to work. So now that we've tightened in our view here to the very tightest we can get it around whatever we're wanting to print, then we come up here to File, Print Preview. Okay, that pops up a preview listing your printer. Now I'm not going to send it to one of my large format printers. I'll do this as if a desktop is all that I had. So I'm going to use a little Epson desktop printer here to do this. Now there are a couple of things on here that need to be checked. Number one, you need to not fit to page. You do not want that, and you don't want model extents. You do, however, want to come over here into the scale window and make the scale 1:1 because you want these full size. Now it says inches here, and we're working in millimeters. It doesn't really matter. You can put miles in here if you want. The important thing is that you want the scale to be 1:1. And that is the important thing. Now, if you'll look over here, all of a sudden your page size is pretty strange, 4.5 by 4.6. Well, that's because it's seeing what we've got here. It's not seeing your 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that you have in your printer. So with that done, all you have to do then is hit OK. Now again, scale 1:1, print size not or unchecked, fit to page, unchecked, use model extent, and hit OK. Now we're done with the preview, and there is your preview. That's what will print when you hit your print button, which is what I'm about to do here in just a moment. Let me get up here to my little printer, and I'll hit print. And now we'll see what happens. It should send that to the printer. It's telling me it's going to print on that printer, and it's telling me it's going to print 1:1. Hit OK, and it should start printing on my little Epson desktop, and I hear it cranking up over here, so that should be doing just fine. Okay, printer is sitting right here by my computer. I'll take a look when it comes out, and there it is. There's our first print. A beautiful full-size copy of our Fuselage Former F1. Now I'm going to move this back into a usable space here. So that is printed. You have to do that with each and every item that you print. Now, if you are printing something that's larger than your page size, it will break it up for you, and it will print several pieces of paper that all you have to do is tape together. But that's how you print 1:1 in SketchUp. Again, it's pretty convoluted, and they could have made it easier for you, but they didn't. So once again, select whatever you're going to print, zoom way in, and shrink up your view here until you're just focused on the exact thing that you want to print, and that alone. And then when you're done with that, then go through again, File, Print Setup first, to that printer, and then all you have to do is print it. Go to Print Preview. I should have printed from the preview. Here's Preview. Again, scale 1:1, nothing else checked. Hit OK, and you're there. Then hit Print. So that's all done. So enough of this for this episode. Let me go back to my full screen. And we're all done, guys. Let me go out here. We'll see you next time.
All right, everyone, that brings this episode to a close. Next time we will start doing more hands-on stuff. The next episode will discuss the tools that we're going to use in order to work with foam, and they're not very many and they're not very expensive, and they pretty much last forever. You can do model airplanes for the rest of your life with the very few tools that we're going to illustrate. So stand by for the next round. Thank you.